Although people will be able to argue with me about everything, people would argue with you about the whole point of whether or not there's a God or a sky or everything, but we can all pretty much come to the agreement that we all have brains, except for maybe certain political parties. The brain itself, how does one access the brain? I'm going to use the metaphor a lot of the brain as a computer. It's easy, we all understand it. If you don't understand it, you better catch up, because if you don't, you're probably going to get left behind. The mind, like computers, has open ports. What do we have? Well, we have the power of sight. These are our senses. Sight, taste, touch, smell, any possible sixth sense, if you happen to believe in that sort of thing. And let's see, sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing. That's another big one. Good for music, all that kind of jazz. Now, as you can imagine, each one of these senses are greatly influenced by advertising. We have sight. Well, I mean, there's no shortage of ways that you can influence sight. Flashing lights, movement. The rules why things are seen. Number one reason why things are seen is movement. That's why they pay those poor bastards to walk up and down the street with signboards waving their arms. And they only get paid provided they keep what? Moving, because they got to stay moving. Without movement, well, everything just kind of gets static. And then they use colors, flashing lights. Go to Vegas. The place is it's the world's largest eyesore. I mean, you go there and everything is just out of control with your sound and lights and flashing. My God, I mean, you'll have brain burnout inside of 20 minutes in Vegas. Then, of course, you have smell. Who can possibly deny how tasty things can get? First thing in the morning when you smell the coffee or bacon or fresh baking bread or what have you. I mean, I am absolutely certain that McDonald's cranks open the doors and has a fan going out into the neighborhood first thing in the morning to get that good McDonald's French fry, carcinogenic, I'm going to rot out your gut smell. Now, when you realize that your senses are being used against you, it begs the question, how do you protect your senses? And furthermore, the number one way of protecting is you've got to be aware that you're under attack. And most people just think, well, that's just part of life. It's part of life that we're manipulated by our senses. No, it's not. You should control that, and you have to control that, because if you don't control it, somebody else will. In order to protect yourself, you first have to understand who yourself is. You have to know what the parameters of yourself are. And this is the subject of many religions. There's all kinds of people who are willing to tell you who you are. Well, actually, that's a misnomer. What they're willing to do is tell you the kind of person they want you to be. And invariably, it involves you being subservient to their religion. One of the things we try to do here at RANT Media is try to create an actual way for young people and old people, just people in general, to be able to realize that they are, in fact, important, and that they themselves, as individual entities, are amazing creatures. I call myself Sean Kennedy the fucking man. That's a joke. It's always been a joke. It's not a real thing. I'm just some guy kind of bumbling along in my own life, the crazy cameraman. So, who am I to tell you who you are? Well, clearly, I have just as much right to tell you who you are as, say, well, Anthony Robbins, anyone out there. Jerry Falwell, George Bush, all these different people, they want to give you an identity, but you don't need one because you've already got one. Sigmund Freud had said that everything that a man does is based upon the urge to be great and the sexual urge. I can't say the same thing for women, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even want to broach that subject. But for folks out there, I'd say it's pretty common. Maybe with women there's a few other priorities in there too, something to do with breeding, mating, that kind of a thing, and men have the same kind of drive. The concept of yourself, the self, not what you want, the you and what do you want. That's a big thing. If you remove all the crap in your life, if you take away all the things that try to tell you who you are, you're not your bank account, you're not your jeans, you're not your car. You're left with this core being at the end of it. Now, there's Eastern religions, Buddhism, whatnot, some Zen thought that's gone into this meditation, lots of ritualized methods of being able to understand who you are as a person, and each one of them are good. I mean, I wouldn't try to discredit them. Even to some degree, prayer and some things used in the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faith, I'm sure that they're probably good too. But religion, organized religion, all of it, is designed to make you subservient to the religion. That has pros and it has cons. But I don't think that in the world of tomorrow, a world of cyborgs and robots and technology and jets that enable us to fly around the world, we're going to be able to exist with these ancient, outmoded ideas. Now, back in the 60s, there was guys who came along with Satanism, which was nothing more than LaVey's stuff was, you know, this whole self-empowering, there is no God, it's all us, hardcore atheism. And that itself has a few points, but it is not, it's like protesting religion for the sake of protesting religion. You know, you have to look at what you want. Once you know who you are as a person, whatever that may be, you can then go to the next point, which is what do you want to be happy? The pursuit of happiness. All of life, really, from the time you're born to the time you die, is really the pursuit of happiness. And your perceptions of what you need to be happy change as you grow up. When you're a child, it could be, you know, milk and cookies. I mean, think about when you were a kid, maybe you had a comic book you wanted, and you would go around the neighborhood, you'd pick up bottles or something like that, you'd go down to the local store and you'd buy a comic book. I used to do that. I used to pick up pop bottles and stuff like that, and I'd go down and I'd buy me a Savage Sword of Conan comic book and a Dr. Pepper. And I would sit back with a shot glass, and I would sip this Dr. Pepper because I would savor it, you know, because you picked up bottles to get this Dr. Pepper, and read this Savage Sword of Conan magazine. And in retrospect now, I think the Savage Sword of Conan magazine was much better for me than the Dr. Pepper was, because as we grow and as we learn, we seem to forget the simple pleasures in life. We seem to forget the joys of like sitting down and spending time alone, maybe with a book or with something like that. Through the media and through, you know, massive saturation of images and technology, I mean, movies have to, the special effects have to keep getting better and better, because if they don't, people get bored with it. It's like we're numbed. It's this weird media drug, this sensory drug, which is overwhelming. Music, you listen to the old music, it's very, very like music from the 60s, very folky, guys singing with the guitar, very, very talented. But imagine if, you know, Terminator X got together with Jimi Hendrix. I mean, wow, we'd have some pretty interesting mixing stuff going on there. So music, all art, all media has evolved throughout time to the point now where we're waiting for the next transcendent level. And the same thing that has happened with music and art and with our desires is happened with advertising. Advertising has now become this massive, intense way where they're doing research now for beaming brain waves at you to get you to buy stuff. And I'm not afraid of, well, I am afraid of that, but I'm afraid of what comes after that. What comes after we get numb to brainwave injected voices in your head advertising? What happens when we're used to that? What's the next level? People coming to your house with SWAT teams to force you to go shopping? I mean, this is insanity. Let's just put the brakes on that right now. Let's talk about who you are before we even talk about the advertising. You have to determine who you are. And I've talked about things like media fasting, where you go out and you don't read any books or magazines, stuff like that. Take yourself so that you go into more of an introspection mode. A media fast is very necessary for you to determine who you are as a person. It doesn't matter who I am. It matters who you are. After you've done your exercising, it's important that you take a moment to focus your mind and your body. There's a number of ways of doing this. You can, you can